I listened to, I think everyone's heard this this debate that took place between Samson Mao and Roger Ver a few months back, and Samson made the point in regards to crypto Keynesians versus crypto Austrians, and I found this point really interesting. And he made the, if memory serves me, he made the point that there are certain people within the community, I think he was making reference to Bitcoin Cash proponents, that are more focused on transactions, on transaction throughput. I think that was the term he used. And then, of course, you have the Bitcoin core proponents that are more focused on using money, using sound money. So this whole hoodling, as you put it. And at least I think that's what he meant. But the bottom line is that he mentioned that, granted, Bitcoin Cash is focusing on, obviously, transaction adoption, all that kind of stuff. He was making the argument that his approach, at least the approach of core, of focusing on having secure, sound money, focusing on the safety, is just as valid. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there's anything to this whole crypto Keynesian message? And do you see Bitcoin Cash as being crypto Keynesian?
Basically, what you're going to end up with is, if you try and create Bitcoin as digital gold, you're going to have digital nothing. Bitcoin will not work as digital gold. Now, in particular, we have a halving in 2 years and a second halving in 4. Now, there's a huge problem before we get into any of the other issues just on this point. If Bitcoin doesn't scale, and I'll talk Bitcoin generally, Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Candy and whatever else, I don't really care, and we're talking markedly, then it's not going to survive. The idea that on 3 Bitcoin, you're going to have miners actually validly doing this, as Moore's law makes ASICs faster and faster, which it will be 100 plus times as much hash power at that stage, chasing the same rewards. If you get to the point where you don't increase this enough, it fails, because the security of the network requires investment. If you don't have that constant investment, you have the ability for an uninterested party to come along and actually collapse the network. The only way this works is for the fees to actually increase. And the only way that the fees increase is through volume. You'll notice luxury goods don't end up being highly profitable. Each individual item may be profitable, but Mercedes are owned by Chrysler. We have Lamborghini, that's owned. We have, let's see, Daimler owned, Maybach owned. We have Rolls-Royce owned, etc. What you end up with is volume ends making more capital. If you want to make a lot of money and you want to have something valuable, you need volume. It may seem counterintuitive to many people, but you make way more money on 0.1 cent fees than you make on $1 fees, because the amount of use cases are exponentially greater. It's a long tail effect. If you cut things off at the long tail, you get a very small number of fees with things like Bitcoin. But even then, why? At the moment, I send between my banks internationally, because of the banking arrangements I have, 9 cents. So all these things about how cheap it is to send internationally, I've sent hundreds of thousands of dollars with 2-hour clearances for 9 cents. That's modern banking. Now, not everyone's set up to do that. So because they don't make many transactions, they get charged more. But big corporations and other such things don't.
That's an interesting point. Obviously, someone like yourself, I think for a lot of people within the Western world, they do have access to banks, it doesn't seem as necessary having something like Bitcoin. I mean, what do you say to people that don't have this libertarian mindset, don't really care about the separation of economics and state. Now, for something like Bitcoin, do you see it? How would you sell it to someone that, I guess, in the first world that is able to do essentially what we're doing now through banks? I mean, what are the advantages of using Bitcoin in the first world outside of having your own sound money that no one else controls? Can you think of anything that you might like to bring to the fore? Because whereas I can see this having a lot of benefit in third world nations.
Now or later?
Yeah. Sorry?
There's two questions. Now or later?
Now or late? Well, now. I mean...
Now, not many. If you're first world, then no. I'll be honest, no. Third world, a hell of a lot. Where we're going to take this is a different matter. First world, in coming years, we have threshold technologies, we have atomic swaps, we have a whole lot of other things we've been working on behind the scenes. That will radically change the nature of finance, banking, and everything else. We can accelerate the number of transactions on an exchange, not just mildly, but markedly. Right now, you have multi-day settlements, and on weekends even longer. Now, an exchange with a 10-minute settlement average can actually start spending way quicker, and that will start happening. When we take this, though, to places like Africa, this becomes remarkably different. Not because we have lightning or large fees or anything silly like this, or satellites or anything crazy, but because we have cash that can be used with sub 1 cent. Cash that can allow tokenization of fiat for onboarding. Cash that can be used for instant atomic swaps and not hash-locked contracts. Hash-locked contracts are not atomic. Atomic, by definition, means instant. It means it happens or it doesn't happen. Full stop. If you have to wait an hour, a week, a month, whatever else, and put it in effective time escrow, it's not atomic. If we take this to remittance, people along the South Africa to Zimbabwe corridor, they bleed money right now. Every exchange they do is painful for them. If we take people along Central America and South America, being able to trade between different locations is painful. Take people in Manila, maids in Singapore, things like this. These people have true needs. The ability to actually set and control their financial security, their sovereignty, that matters to these people, not because they're libertarians, because they need to live.
For sure. For sure. It's interesting. I remember listening to one of your talks. I think it was a talk or an interview, and you mentioned you spent some time in Ghana. I'm actually from Ghana, West Africa myself, and I can definitely attest to one of the things you're talking about, how people over time they build houses and it's their savings. I mean, my parents for I think the last 20 years had been slowly building this house, and it's kind of like a store of their wealth, and it's something that I can definitely attest to. And that, I think, obviously with the advent of Bitcoin, it makes it a lot more efficient, makes it easier for people to store their wealth, gaining access to Bitcoin, rather than having to have it done solely over the course of your lifetime through building this house. So I can definitely see applications in the third world. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Dr. Wright, is in regards to the future of Bitcoin. One of the things that I heard, I'm sure you're familiar with the works of Andreas Antonopoulos. Now, one of his views in regards to what Bitcoin is going to look like in the future is he looked at it in the same way that he looks at languages, in that, granted, there are obviously many, many different languages. There are key languages that are used. And I know you're a Bitcoin maximalist, as am I, and I think ultimately we do want one coin in order to have the best system, make things more efficient, easier. But do you see a world where there are going to be a lot of different cryptocurrencies, but just, I guess, a few? Or do you see there being only one coin?
It will only work as one.
Why is that?
Full stop.
Why is that? I mean, you could have your
system. The economics of the system don't allow multiple competing systems to survive. If you end up with multiple competing monies, they all fall back to one. If you look at what happens in areas where there is an ease to accessing US dollar. So Jimmy and I were recently over in Rwanda, and I found people would take US dollars, if you handed them US dollars, without a qualm. Rwandan dollars, some people accept them, some people say no, and this is in Rwanda. So if you get to the scenario where you have differential aspects of currency, then you have a transactional cost of moving between those. And with technology we're bringing out for atomic swaps and other such things, the cost is going to be practically zero. So if you can atomically swap between currencies globally without any friction, then you have the scenario, then why would you hold in your own depreciating currency?
Craig, just to start, do you want to, can you expand on the concept of atomic swaps for people that are a little new to this? Because I know that is a relatively new technology, the oblivious transfers, the atomic swaps. Can you explain what exactly that is?
A real atomic swap, not a hash lock contract, is the creation of an exchange where you and I exchange A for B at whatever value or exchange notational value that we accept.
So let's say Ethereum for Ripple or something like that. That can be done with atomic swaps.
US dollar coin for Bitcoin.
Without an exchange.
So instantly just happening. Now, that can actually be done to the point where you can have a pre-settlement amount on an exchange that is securely locked into yourself. Because of thresholding and group signature technology, you can effectively control your own money, but the exchange also controls enough that they can't lose. And we can have it so that you can do a key exchange that ensures that it's going to be instant. Now, some of that comes down to a few things that go way beyond Bitcoin that I've been doing. We've got some patents now that have been filed on group additions in ECDSA. What that would allow would be everything Schnorr does, except more efficiently. So we can actually do a group signature where it's a single Bitcoin address, but potentially there could be 10, 100, whatever else, signing parties as part of that address. And you won't even know.
That's some powerful stuff. It seems as if there's all these amazing technologies coming out of nChain. I mean, you mentioned you're up to 725, I think. Is there anything that is yet to come out that you think is really going to surprise people? I mean, the atomic... I think I heard you in the last interview.
I think there's a lot going to surprise people.
There's a lot... Okay, well, I'm definitely...
I won't talk about it all yet. We have already seen some of our technology, our number 42 sort of key exchange has been used in the creation of Keyport, if I'm getting the name right. That's effectively a group chat application where people can exchange sort of values and securely encrypt everything between each other. We've got a number of ways of doing that, and I've even managed to find a way of doing Diffie-Hellman key exchanges in ECDSA, so which is, in theory, and if you look at any of the crypto lists and whatever else, only able to be scaled to 2 parties. We can do it to n parties where n can be any value.
Fantastic.
It's something that hasn't been released yet, and no one's heard about, but we've actually done it, and it's in for patenting, which of course goes beyond Bitcoin as well, because in theory you can't do this. So let's go for Schnorr and Lamport and all these ugly signature schemes that allow that because no one's figured out how to do it in ECDSA, but unfortunately for those people, we have.